Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog Fantasy. This is the first of a slew of Open Championship shows. Today we're trying something new. I got Alex Blickle on the line from FTNFantasy.com. He's at a simulator. He is he's not a professional golfer at this point, but he has the skills of a professional golfer. So much easier putting him out there than putting me out there to try to talk through the first 9 holes of Royal Troon. We play around with the weather on the simulator. Obviously, we're not going to get the same sort of fescue type lies on a simulator that players will see in real life. But today's entire thing is to walk through and see what types of players, which types of shot shapes, and how the elements can really make an impact to try to point you in the right directions of the players that you want to go through this week. So this is an additional show, a bonus show. If you're listening on the audio podcast feed, I'd recommend going to check this one out on the Mayo Media Network YouTube page, just so you can get the visualizations around it. Alex and I try to do a good job of talking through the construct of the holes, the types of shots that he's trying to play, which types of players can play these types of shots, and the different ways that you can try to attack this course and how all the different variables can go into one. So we had a few glitches in the simulator. It's not as smooth as it probably should be, but hey, we wanted to try something new for you, the viewer, and that's what we get when people use the code MAYO at UnderdogFantasy.com. You can get a deposit bonus of up to $250, and it allows us to experiment with different types of shows like this. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Smash the like while you're here, and use fantasynational.com/Mayo. Get 20% off and put those tools to good use for the final major of 2024. Enjoy.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
I was doing this exact sort of thing, just playing Pinehurst the week of the U.S. Open. And I thought, man, this would have been a lot better to do like a week earlier, and I'd have, a nice indication of how the course is going to play. Decided to check if Troon was on there, and sure enough, it's one of the preloaded courses. So here we are.
So do you want to walk us through the settings that we're going to be using for at least the front 9?
Yeah. So basically, the really cool thing about Open Championships, as everyone knows, is that how difficult the week is so dependent on the weather and the conditions. Whereas you go to Muirfield Village, that golf course is always going to be tough. You go to Bethpage Black, that course is always going to be tough. We don't know what kind of conditions we're going to get here at Troon. Maybe it's another 20 under winter, although even that year that Stenson won at 20 under, it was a much more difficult golf course, and that was a 4-over cut. But you'll be able to see as we change the settings how easy this course can play or how difficult it can play. So we're going to start light winds, which on the simulator actually plays more like moderate winds, but we're at sea level since that's where this course is. We've got it playing very firm and fast. Always expect that over there in Scotland. So let's get started.
Yeah, so just to give people a bit of a brief on what Alex was just talking about, this turned into a match play situation, basically over the entire weekend. Last time we saw this in 2016, Stenson and Phil ended up in this weird pocket of tee times that lasted about half an hour to 45 minutes, that they got essentially optimal conditions the first 2 days, whereas everyone else had to play an absolute gusty winds, rain, whatever it might be, and they jumped out to a huge lead. So they were 20 under and 17 under. The third place finisher was also a part of that mini wave. It was JB Holmes, and he was only 6 under. So not only did Stenson and Phil play fantastically, they also got the draw bias in their favor and really took advantage of that. But even to look at some of the other names that ended up at the top of the leaderboard, JB Holmes, Steve Stricker, Sergio, Rory, Hatton, Beef Johnson was another one who was in that great time period. Schwartzel was in that time period. Bill Haas was in that time period. So you're really going to have to depend on the weather report and trying to figure out how to analyze that. Even micro tee time stacks might be the play if you're playing daily fantasy this week, or even how you want to attack the betting board. But we're going to see how this course plays as a whole, just in case, sometimes we've seen this, Alex, that for the Open Championship, that you just get good weather all 4 days and it's super easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can happen. And, the other really cool thing, by the way, that year is even the last day, Stenson and Phil, I think they were 8 under and 6 under. The next best score on the course was like 4 under. So it was pretty spectacular golf that they played.
All right, well, let's get to this. Let's play hole number 1 at Troon. This is Seal. It plays right around, 370 yards-ish?
Yeah, I think so. I want to see if I can move. There we go. Okay. Need to move that box so I can see here. So, Pat, do you want me to kind of talk through the shots that I'm going to play?
Yeah, talk through the strategy of the hole of what you think that these guys might be doing in the field.
Cool. So as you can see, as I expand this, you got these two pop bunkers. You need to avoid those pop bunkers. You can see it's about 235 to them. So not an issue. I'm going to take it over them, 263 to carry. And then we've got the next bunker all the way up at like 330-ish. That's going to be a green side bunker. So I'm just taking driver. I'm going to go right over those bunkers to try to get this as close to the green as possible. It's a pretty short, easy opening hole.
Okay, let's see it. So this year, just to give people some context about what has changed about Troon over the past, I guess, 8 years since we last saw this, they've expanded the really long par 5, number 6. There are 10 new tee boxes on the course, but number 1 seems to be relatively unchanged. It might play a tad bit longer. Nice shot when you're in the middle of the fescue now.
Yeah, so it's funny. We talked about this right before we went live. How difficult the fescue is going to be enormously important to what the scoring conditions are. And it's also going to be really important to what skill sets really translate to success. If it's not difficult out of this stuff, especially up around the greens, like in this 50-yard area, it's just a huge advantage for the guys who can just take driver all the time, go over a lot of these bunkers. Like, everyone's going to be able to clear those bunkers on this hole, but there are a lot of other holes on this golf course where distance could be extremely predictive of success, but only if the fescue isn't super penalizing.
Now, would you say that came to fruition last time that we saw this course? Because even when you take a look back at 2004, when it was still one of the shorter Open Championships in the Rota, you had Ernie and Phil and Lee Westwood near the top, but Todd Hamilton ends up winning. You have Mike Weir, who's into that mix. Even Davis Love III was a little bit longer at that time period. Even Retief Goosen, another guy who bombed it out there. Tiger Woods. It did seem like there was a bomber's bias, but then you had Todd Hamilton out of nowhere too. So you can also have that alternate skill set if everything kind of goes your way.
Yeah, and the other thing is, notice that there are multiple ways to play this hole. So like some of the guys who either aren't comfortable hitting out a fescue or maybe don't have the distance to carry some of these bunkers, you can just take a long iron off that tee and then trust yourself from 170 yards. Is it going to be tougher to get it close from 170 than guys who are end up in the fairway 40 yards from the hole? Of course, but there are also going to be guys who have success with that route.
So you're in the fescue right now, just short of 1 to the left. Now, we don't know what the predictability is going to be of any of these lies. How much do you have into the hole now?
I've got 52 yards, and you'll notice I really try to favor that left side because this pin is back right. I have plenty of room here to get this ball to stop. Obviously, I'm hitting off of a mat here, so it's going to stop quicker than it would if I was actually in fescue, but there's plenty of room to elevate this ball and get it to stop.
All right, let's see it. We got a leggy feed here. So did that stay up on the green?
It did, yeah. It's we've got it on auto putt, so it was pretty solid. If the video wasn't choppy for you guys, you would have seen that the greens are firm and fast right now. So that ball, I was expecting to stop a lot sooner than it did, but it did hold the green.
All right, so here on number 2, this is, what are we calling this? We're calling this Black Rock, 391 yards, another par 4. We don't get to a par 5 until we get to number 4. This is playing as a par 71. There's 2 par 5s on the front side, 1 on the back side. And as I made mention, number 6, Turnberry, played at 601 yards in 2014, but that's going to be expanded even more this time around. So we'll see how that ventures as trying to get to it in 2. Probably pretty unlikely depending on the conditions, but this is Black Rock. How are you seeing this whole play out?
It's another one where I've got bunkers that I need to stay short of long, but then also bunkers I need to carry. Another one that fits driver for me. This is one I would expect to see a lot of drivers on just because there's not a whole lot of room like in between. You can see this group of bunkers here in the middle. It's like you either have to stay short and end up with was that 170, or you're not going to fit it in this tight little spot. So then you just widen the fairway by going over, which is what I'm going to try to do.
All right, let's see it. Bring out that power. What do you average off the tee?
It's a little hard to say. I haven't been playing as often, so I think I've lost some speed, but it seems like my ball speed is stationary, kind of the upper 170s, and carries around 305, 310 right now.
So who would that make you the equivalent of on the PGA Tour? Like, are you hitting it as longer than, or like about as Brendan Todd, or are you in that like pretty average distance?
I'm definitely longer than Brendan Todd. I would say probably good question. You know, the first name that comes to mind is actually a live guy, Joaquin Neiman. We have a similar ball flight too. It's more low penetrating rather than that high, super long carry type of ball flight that like a Rory has or Cam Young has. So I'm not sure exactly where the ball speed and carry numbers compare, but that's the first guy that comes to mind just from a ball shape, ball flight type perspective.
All right, let's get it out there.
Let's see what. I've also got a left to right wind here, so I've got to give this a little bit of room on the left side. A little thin, but I like it.
Is that going to hang on?
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Oh, short of those bunkers too.
Yeah.
Must be nice must be nice to step up like I haven't played in ages and hit 320 off the tee.
I spent like an hour warming up to make sure that I could swing it well today.
All right, so from here it's basically just what do you have in one? Geez,
I only have 80. Just 80 yards, a little flip wedge, which is why I think we're going to see a lot of guys take driver here, just because, man, anytime you can give yourself that kind of scoring opportunity, as long as you're confident that you can find fairway off the tee, and it's not like it's a super narrow fairway, so I think we'll see drivers, and I think we'll see guys try to take advantage with their wedge.
All right, so like nice little spinny wedge into this.
Yeah, I've got a back pin, so I'm going to try to flight this down a little bit, let it skip back there.
He lost his camera. Can we still hear him talk or no? All right, so we're going to have a birdie opportunity here. Birdie, there we go. Hit it to 6 feet, and the auto puts itself in. So that's back-to-back birdies to start the scores?
Well, the first one was, so they give decimal scoring. So the first one was a 0.1 under par birdie. So like you can see top left of the screen, I'm now 0.9 under par through 2 holes.
All right, but it does seem like these first 2 holes are pretty gettable by the field. Number 3 kind of feels that way too, only 380 off the tee. What's the danger here?
You've got this creek crossing at about 260, so I would guess that we see everybody stay short of that. It's only about 135 in, so you're still getting wedge in your hand. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to try to hit a 4-iron, chase it down the fairway. We might see some guys take 3-iron. We might even see some guys just try to hit a stinger with a 5 or 6-iron and just let it chase all the way there.
Do you think that anyone will have the gumption to try to carry this?
If it's downwind, I think we might see that, just because then there are going to be guys who have a chance to actually chase that up to the green. You see, it's only 374 to the flag. So if it's firm, if it's downwind and there's a chance that you can actually get to the green, we'll see guys take driver. If it's into the wind like it is for me here, you're probably not going to see that, because it's not that much easier to hit it close from 50 yards than it is from 135. And it's just so much more likely that you're in fairway instead of the fescue rough if you're hitting an iron.
All right. Just finding fairways.
Have to. It's it probably won't surprise anyone to know that I pretty much play a cut only. I don't like to draw the ball. It doesn't work out very well for me. So,
what do you think? Like looking at this course, though, do you think that there is a preferred shot shape, or is it just find the fairway whichever way you can?
I think it's mostly about the direction of the wind. I think guys who are able to shape it both directions will have an advantage when you get into these crosswinds, because your margin of error just becomes so much wider when you're able to shape the ball into the direction of the wind. So if you have a left to right wind, it helps to hit a draw. If you have a right to left wind, it helps to hit a cut. guys who can do that in both directions, like Scotty Scheffler does it better than anyone, maybe ever. That's just a huge advantage when it gets windy.
So even taking iron off the tee, you're 132 in here. This does seem to be a relatively like flat course. Have we seen any elevation so far?
No, in fact, this one is up 1 foot, so very flat. I've got a little wind into and from the left, so I'm going to play this about 137, 138. Just try to fly the pitching wedge there.
Okay.
And even into the wind, you can see how firm it is. That thing landed by the hole into the wind and still ends up way past.
All right. I mean, this simulator happens to think you're a pretty good putter, it seems like.
It's what was that one? Did it give me like 0.1 under again? Yeah, so another 0.1 under par birdie.
So now you're a full 1 stroke under par?
Full 1 stroke under now, yeah.
All right. So number 4 is the first of the par 5s. It plays 560 yards. It might be a little bit longer with the new tee box that we've seen. So take a rip at this and see what you're left with in 2.
So first thing I'll point out, these bunkers are geniusly placed. This first one, to stay short of it, you'd have to hit it less than 270. To carry the long one, you've got to fly it 305, 310. I've got a crosswind left to right. And, you know, these bunkers, they're not on the edge of the fairway. They're like left center. So I'm going to try to carry that last one, even with this crosswind. I probably won't, but maybe I'll just miss it either a little bit left or a little bit right. Otherwise, I'm going to be chipping out, but I don't think I'd be able to get there in 2, going short of that first bunker and then trying to play a 3-wood from there. So I'm going to go with this route.
Okay.
Oh, it needs to get right.
It's going right at it.
All right.
Oh, you flew it. Did it hit? Did it do?
I think I got a little. I think I got a little bit of a glitch in my favor there. It looked like it landed in the face of the bunker and bounced forward, which obviously in real life would not happen. So little lucky break there.
So, but I just even to think like where distance might become an advantage, even with the wind into you a little bit, the bigger hitters are going to be able to carry that bunker, right?
Rory and Bryson are going to laugh at that bunker. Yeah. There aren't going to be many who are able to carry it confidently, depending on the wind. I mean, if it's downwind, you'll see a lot of guys carrying it, but Rory and Bryson would have no trouble with that.
So what does this leave you in, like 240?
238. Looks like a back-ish pin, so I'm only going to hit a 5-iron, which I'm trying to carry about 215. I'm just going to let that bound forward.
So this is a course, by and large, where you can play the strategy of playing it short and running it up if it's firm and fast?
Yeah, I mean, if it's firm and fast, you almost have to. If I were to land this, let's say 230, there's no doubt in my mind I would miss this green long. So I might even have too much club in my hand. There's a chance that I should be hitting 6-iron and landing at 200, but you'll notice right in front of the green, you've got those 2 bunkers. So let me blow that up a little bit for you guys. So I don't want to try to land the ball here because then I'm most likely in one of those bunkers. I'm trying to land it just past those bunkers, a little bit on the green around that 215 number.
And then let it roll up. All right, let's see if you can talk through the strategy and then do it.
Well, it was a good swing. It's going to be short.
Short into the butt. Maybe you'll hop out of it again. Oh, no.
So, you know what? I had the distance wrong there. I don't know how that worked, but that said 224 carry. I was trying to carry it 215 and it ended up short. So I messed something up there.
So these are the giant pop bunkers. This one seems playable out of, though, as long as you're not up against the lip.
Yeah, I would say most of them are. In fact, one of my first impressions playing this on the simulator a couple weeks ago was that they don't seem as penalizing as most pot bunkers. Now, the fairway bunkers, it's not like you're going to be hitting to the green anyway, but around the greens, I don't think we'll see as many guys get stuck in them as we sometimes see in Open Championships. It looks like most of the time you're going to be able to get yourself out. In fact, you can even see now. Maybe this is just inaccurate on the actual simulator, but if you look over on the right hand side here, like you can see that there's more slope to the faces of these bunkers than you often see. A lot of them are almost straight vertical. These don't seem to be quite vertical.
All right. What do you have left here? Like 16 yards to the pin?
Yeah, it just says 50 feet. It's weird though. Like I'm staring at myself in a bunker. I want to play a bunker shot, and then I look down and I have to clip the ball off of a turf mat. So I can't really play a bunker shot, which it would actually be a lot easier than trying to hit a flop only 50 feet off of a fairway. But,
All right.
First world problems with the simulator. That worked out pretty well.
Yeah, I think that worked out fine. So this should be a birdie / eagle hole, especially if it's downwind. If it's downwind, we're going to be seeing eagles.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be really dependent on number one, the wind, and then also, as you said, like I think they maybe lengthened it, so it will really depend on the tee shot. We will definitely see a number of guys hitting either long iron or 3-wood or something to stay short of those bunkers, in which case they'll have 300 yards left, and now you're just hoping to pitch something close to make birdie. So it won't be super easy, except for the guys who can take that last bunker on and just fly it.
So do you think that we're going to see, because we've seen so far that like even some of your drives on 1 and 2, 80 yards in, 135 yards in, even if you laid up a little bit, like could we see, I mean, we saw Todd Hamilton end up winning here. Could we have like a Zach Johnson type who ended up doing really well, where they're just not really going for it, but get dialed in from 120 and in?
Yeah, it will also depend on the firmness of the greens. I think the firmer the greens are, the more advantage you're going to see from guys who have that distance, so that they're then spinning a wedge in and they can really control how far that ball releases once it lands. If it's firm, like even the super accurate with their irons, Colin Morikawa type, he might have trouble getting the ball close from 170, even if he can hit a ton of greens. So scoring opportunities might be really dependent on distance, but you might see guys just hang in there, especially if it's playing really difficult, by just hitting a ton of greens, not making many birdies, but 30 feet over and over and over again, and you just don't make bogeys.
Greenan is hole number 5, a 210-yard par 3. What danger do you see up around the green?
There are a ton of bunkers here. This green is very Pinehurst-like, where a lot of the green isn't really green. If you hit it there, it's just going to roll off. So you have to be very, very precise here. I've got a left to right wind. Another one where the pin's a little bit back, so I'm not trying to carry this anywhere near that 213 number. Probably going to try to carry it 190 to 195. So I've got 7-iron in hand and going to try to hit it hard, but I feel like I need to do that. I need to hit something high with spin rather than take some off of a 6-iron, because I want to be able to control that spin once it lands. Otherwise, it's just going to go forever.
Okay.
Oh, lost it right.
Oh, you're Brendan Grace at Chambers Bay. You got to get lucky in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this is instructive, though. So if you have short-sided yourself to the right here with the pin at the back on the screen, obviously you've missed the bunkers, which all seem to be predominantly on the left of the screen. You're in the fescue. You're not going to be able to control the spin. You might not even be able to get a club on it. Like, what do you think your options would be from here?
One advantage here is that I'm going back into the wind, so I can throw this up in the air. You can also see, maybe you can't see it on the screen, there's a bit of a false front that I'm staring at. So if I land it into that false front, it will kill all the speed. Now, if I miss that false front, it's just going to kind of go forever past green. But there is an opportunity for me to get this close, particularly if I try to take this up in the air. How in control guys will be of the trajectory out of this fescue rough is yet to be seen. Like, again, that's something that will really determine the difficulty of this course. But if it's doable from a live perspective, then this shot is very much doable.
All right.
Like you could see, that one only stopped because it landed into the false front. If I had missed the false front, I'd probably be over the green.
And you were able to put that up into the air a bit too, weren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, but again, that's because I'm hitting off of a mat. If I was actually in the rough, who knows where that would have gone.
All right, well, let's play this one. This is number 6. It should be 200 and it was 601 yards in 2014, but it should be extended by like 25 yards. So let's play this one with normal conditions and see how it goes. And then for the final 3 holes of the front 9, we'll turn up the wind and we'll turn everything up a little bit to see how much more difficult the conditions can get. But I do want to see this par 5 optimally to see how players can potentially attack this.
So one thing I'll make note of is you'll see once again, this wind left to right helping a little bit. Pretty much had this same wind every single hole because the front 9 goes out in one direction, back 9 comes back in that same direction. So if you're getting crosswind on one hole, you're getting a crosswind on all of the holes. Yet another, big time variable that we just don't know what they're actually going to face. But if they get crosswinds for 18 holes, obviously that's going to make it very difficult. This is a really well-designed par 5 because the further you hit it off this tee, you can see the more narrow it becomes. So I'm going to try to hit this one hard, but this left to right wind favors my cut a little bit, so I can just aim down the left side, let the wind carry it back to the middle. But man, the further you go, the more narrow it becomes, and yet you need to be in the fairway to have a good look at hitting this one into.
Do you think this one is, I guess if you get the proper rollout, that you can get there into? Would you imagine most people get there into?
I think anybody who hits this fairway will be able to get there into as long as it's firm. Because if you're hitting the fairway, you're getting a lot of rollouts. Hopefully I can show that and not hit this one into the fescue and give myself 350.
All right.
Oh, I may have overcut it. Hold on, ball.
Got to get lucky.
Yeah, we'll be all right. Didn't hit that one very well, but it worked.
Went 329?
It went 329 because it rolled for like 40 yards.
All right, so what are you left with now going into the screen?
257. And I want to see. Oh, actually, no. It's more than that. It's 275. 257 is just where it's telling me to aim. So because it's 273, it's 235-ish to the front. So a huge deep green. I think I want to land this a little bit short. So I'm going to take a 4-iron and just try to land this a little short. All I have to make sure that I do is carry this bunker on the right. Well, it's a little further than I expected it to be. So I've got to carry this at least like 225. So a good strong 4-iron will do it. Missed a little bit, but it's not going to be a bad spot unless it rolls all the way down. Okay, pretty good.
So it checked up on you, and now you have about 40 yards left to the pin?
Yep, not a bad spot to come in from. Hit that one a little bit off the toe. Really needed to make good contact, but that's kind of the beauty of this style of golf where it is so firm and you're trying to run the ball up. If I was just hitting into a soft green and I carry the ball 218 instead of 228, it's not going to be that different of a result. But because I hit it a little bit poorly, I also don't get that big first bounce that I was counting on. So instead of 10 yards short, I'm 30 to 40 yards short of my intended result just because of a little bit of a mishit.
All right, let's spin that one up there.
Oh, soft little bounce there, but not
So-
terrible.
So do you imagine, so the way that you just played this off the tee, I assume the bigger drivers will get it down there a little bit deeper, even though that the fairway is going to narrow a little bit for your shorter hitters or your average hitters. Do you think they end up behind where you were at potentially? And then, do they go 3-wood at this? Like, what is the strategy, do you think, to try to get there into, or do you think the people just punt on getting there into? Because it is going to play a little bit longer. this time around, that if you have to hit a wood into this, do you think that people will just lay up instead?
It's a really good question because almost everyone would have the opportunity to get there in two with a good one because they can land it 40 yards short and it will chase up there, especially with three wood. But in that scenario, if you miss and you end up in the fescue 40 yards short, that's a really difficult up and down. Now you're just trying to make par, whereas they're probably pretty confident in their ability to make birdie from 80 yards by hitting a 4-iron or a 6-iron. So you could probably get some mixed decisions there. Some guys would still go for it with three wood. Some guys would lay up. It might just depend on how confident they are with three wood itself.
Okay, well, do you want to up the settings here and make it a bit gusty for yourself?
Yeah, I'll have to go out and come back in. So you want me to do that?
Yeah, go out, come back in. We'll keep talking it through. So based on what we've seen so far, it's difficult to imagine like which types of player. It seems like almost anyone can play well here, but if you can, I mean, it's a lot like Pinehurst. If you hit it long and straight, it seems like you can really wax this place.
Yeah, and I would say, on the typical week on tour, you go to a golf course, Muirfield Village is always going to test players in the same way. Augusta's always going to test people in the same way. When you go to a course like this and you're so dependent on the weather, different skill sets are going to pop based on the conditions that we see, the conditions of the fescue, the conditions of the firmness of the greens, and of course the wind. So at this point, yeah, it's tough to say, but there's definitely a path to distance being by far the most important thing. There's also a path to distance not really mattering, and it all being about accuracy off the tee, approach play, and short game. I think no matter what, short game will matter a lot here because you see a lot of the same kind of crowned greens that we saw at Pinehurst. So hitting greens can be difficult. And part of that around the green signal is also just your ability to manage your misses. So that skill set's really going to come to the forefront as well.
How much, like, did you notice even at Pinehurst, like the typical great short game players, like their skills may have been mitigated? Were they more enhanced? Because I do find that at Open Championships, you do kind of see a different class of short game player, like typically guys that might not be so good, that link style courses, these greens, the creativity that goes into some of these shots can really enhance what they do, whereas your typical week on tour, that's just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw a little bit more of the traditional short game skill come through at Pinehurst this year just because of all the grain around the green. So guys actually had to hit chip shots and stuff. So like, for example, I think it was on Saturday, on 13, Rory hit this beautiful spinner close from short of the green, makes the putt. Oberk has the exact same shot, tries to hit a high one because he doesn't feel like he can spin it as well, goes through into the bunker. From the bunker goes to the same spot and ends up playing ping pong across the green, and then wouldn't even take on that shot the second time. He just bailed out to the left. So we did see some short game skill really come to the forefront. But again, the other thing you see is it's almost not even how good are you on those short game shots. It's how well do you set yourself up to get up and down by missing in the right spot.
All right, so you're back on one right now. Do you have the ability to jump ahead?
I messed it up. No, I messed that up. I'll go out and come back in. It only takes 90 seconds or whatever.
All right, and we'll keep talking this through. I'm trying to get a gauge of what sort of players that I want to be. And I guess it really just comes down to, like, how much of your decision-making this week, be it betting, be it DraftKings, even props on Underdog in round one. Code Mayo, Underdog, get that deposit bonus of up to $250. And there might be, it feels like this is a week where if you can get the skeleton key and figure it out, that you might have the advantage to take full opportunity early in the week before lines adjust and people pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah, I agree completely. So I would say the very first thing that I want to get a read on is how penalizing is the fescue. If the fescue isn't penalizing, no matter what, distance is going to be extremely important. If it is penalizing, now accuracy comes more into play off the tee. But then I also want to know the firmness of the greens. Firmness of the greens, I think, is second. The firmer it is, again, the more distance is going to come into play. Because, again, like if the greens are soft or even just softer than we often see in Open Championships, then guys are going to be able to hit the ball close and control their distance from 170, where they can just lay short of all these bunkers, hit every fairway, that sort of play. That won't work anywhere near as well with firm greens. So those are the two big things that I want to look for. But then the other thing I'd say is, especially in DraftKings, just skill set stack. If you don't know how it's going to play, make one lineup that's all distance, make another lineup that's all guys who are going to lay up and try to hit it close from 170. And if one of the two ends up being the proper way that week, then you're in business.
Well, I feel like we got sold a bill of goods at Pinehurst, especially with the way that even the week of the people were talking about it, that if you got put into the Wiregrass, it's like, well, it's 50-50 that you're going to get a bad lie. It felt like it was like 90% good lies in there.
It did. It really did. And
The other aspect of that too was when you're in that Wiregrass and you have a good lie, it's basically like a regular iron shot. You're hitting ball first. You don't have to worry about, oh, is this a fly or is it not? Very different story this week if you're hitting out of the fescue.
True. So this is hole number 7, 405 yards as a par 4. This seems like another one where if you take out driver and control it, you're just going to have 90 yards in.
Yep, but now you can see over on the right-hand side, we've got a 15-mile-per-hour wind, which on the simulator plays more like 20 to 25. They really juiced up the effect of wind. So even though I've got a fairway bunker at that 301-yard mark, I'm just going to try to hit a low one right at that and just trust it's not going to get there or it moves right of it.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, no.
didn't expect. I did what I wanted. I hit the low kind of stinger type shot. Just I didn't think I had to worry about that bump. But
So
so
now,
only 130.
yeah. So what do you have? So you still only have 137 left, right?
Yeah, so I've got 131 yards, but again, it's into this big wind, so immediately, like, with a 15-mile-per-hour wind in from the left, I can't just hit a stock shot. Even though I don't like to draw the ball, this is the type of wind that I'm now going to try and start shaping shots, really controlling the trajectory. The guys on tour are a hell of a lot better than I am at doing this type of thing, so hopefully this goes fairly well. But 131 here, I'm going to try and play like a 150-yard little punch draw, going all the way up to a 9-iron. 131.5 is my gap wedge, but with this wind, I'm going to just punch a 9-iron, try to keep the spin down as much as possible, really keep this ball low so that it's not, at the mercy of this big wind.
Is that going to stay up?
No,
Oh,
it is
no.
not. So
Oh, no.
visual of just how Pinehurst like some of these greens are. That might be as severe as any you see. But man, as soon as the wind picks up, like if there's no wind there, I can pretty confidently just say, yeah, left side of the green, I won't mess with that. I'm just going to go at this flag and I don't have to worry about that fall off. With this wind, I have to play left so that I don't get short-sided right at this green. And then you bring that into play, which is why short game will matter, especially if this wind is up, just because you're not going to be able to really control how many greens you hit. Sometimes the really good shots are going to just get funneled off like that. And now I'm in a bunker. So this is just standard short game for a lot of these guys.
So do you think that the links experience is going to come? I mean, if there is even a modicum of wind or rain or whatever it might be, because if you start getting rain and it's windy, you start getting colder conditions as well, especially, I mean, even this time of year for an Open Championship. Like you might see some toques out there if it's not so great. But would you put an emphasis, if we do see wind in the forecast, or at least a lot of wind, on guys that are used to these style of courses? Because it's funny to think about Phil and Stenson, like going head to head. I really couldn't name you two more opposite type of players. You have Phil, who is all feel, all over the place, great short game, creatively, he's a creative magician. And then you have Stenson, who's like a robot person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the overlap between those two guys is that they're, especially Stenson, like his major skill was managing the golf course. Super precise on his shots. And then Phil, to your point, very much opposite. Like his great short game wasn't because he was always in the right spot. It was because no matter where he was, he had the shot to pull it off. So you do have different skill sets, but I think where they overlapped is that they had options. they could take on pins, or they could choose to play away from them based on their other strengths. Or in Senson's case, like it's his iron strength that allows him to take on the pin. In Phil's case, he was able to take on pins because he said, you know what, even if I do short side myself, I'll have an option. I'll be able to recover from that.
And to look at after the first round, Phil jumped out. Phil was up by 3 after round 1. He shot an 8 under in round 1. Reed and Keimer were tied for second at 5 under. Then you had a collection of guys at 4 under. Keegan, Finau, Horschel, Zach Johnson, my guy Soren Kelson, who was actually very good at that Windy Masters in 2016 that Danny Willett ended up winning. Stricker, Justin Thomas, Andy Sullivan. What do you think the connective tissue is with those guys? I would put Keegan and Finau kind of into the same bucket of what they do well, but everyone else is kind of like short hitting, accuracy, good with wedges, good short game, can putt.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd also say, if you remember that week, they did get some rain. So I think that rain helped soften the course a little bit, which brought those shorter guys a little bit more into play. But I think as you've kind of said, as we've played these 9 holes, you can see different paths to success. Not every guy's going to have to take that exact same recipe and turn it into what they're trying to do that week.
And even to kind of scale back a little bit to take a look after round 3, when Phil and Stenson were at 12 under and 11 under, you had Bill Haas in 3rd place. You had Kelson and Stricker, who were still inside the top 6, and then Reed T9. Everyone else kind of, Phil distance, Beef distance, JB Holmes distance, Tony Finau distance. Keegan at the time, we had one of the longest, straightest players in golf. Sergio, immaculate ball striker. Charles Schwartzel at the time was still up there as well in terms of distance. So it's interesting to see that the more the week went along, outside of Stenson, who, as you mentioned, very good at course management, there's different skill sets to do here, that the top of the leaderboard started to become more populated by the big bombers.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing that really stands out when looking at that year and the scoring, you didn't see a ton of guys who were like 70, 71, 69, really consistent scores. You saw 4 over one day, 3 under the next, 2 over the next. This golf course is the margin of error is so small, and the difference between being sharp and being just a little bit off is huge. Think of that 7th hole that we just played. If I was 2 yards closer to that pin, I hold the green, I have a really good look at birdie. Because I missed by 2 yards left, it rolls all the way off into a deep bunker. Now I'm struggling to make par. Same story here on number 8. Teeny tiny hole, teeny tiny green. Yeah, it's only 116, but it's a little bit downhill. So this one's like, I'm probably either going to have a good look at birdie, or I'm making bogey, maybe even double, if I don't quite pull off the tee shot the way I want.
Yeah, and this hole has the ability to play as the shortest hole in Open Championship history, depending on which tee boxes that they use on the day. This is the Postage stamp hole. Stock, it plays 123 yards as a par 3. It's very similar to that really short par 3 that we saw at LA Country Club last year, it seems.
Yeah, it's also another one that's so reminiscent of Pinehurst. Remember, during the broadcast, they kept showing the effective green size. Same idea here. So as I blow this up on the green, like the effective green size is probably somewhere in this area. So way inside of what the actual outer limits of the green are. So really have to be precise on this shot. And it's 15 miles an hour downwind from the right front pin. So I'm going to try to hit something spinny. I need this ball to land quickly as soon as it hits the ground, but chances are the best I can do here is like 30 feet past the hole. I'm going to try to be a little bit right of the pin just so I don't mess with that left side fall off, just like I did on last hole.
Okay.
See, immediately the wind takes it left. Oh, that was not great. So hard to judge. So I actually think that might have been a glitch in the simulator. It told me I carried it 101, and I think it only went about 90 yards in the air there, but we'll play it as it lies.
Well, you got saved on one of the glitches in your favor. Now the bank has come back for the money that you took from them earlier.
And honestly, that's exactly how an Open Championship golf course should play. So you're going to get good breaks, you're going to get bad breaks, and you've got to react to them equivalently. You can't just get mad when the bad one happens.
I mean, you can get mad when the bad ones happen, but you have to be pretty gleeful when the good ones happen. That's usually how I try to wait it out.
Fair, very fair.
All right, so you get it on nice and easy here. We'll play number 9, and then we'll call it for this. But yeah, I mentioned Billy Horschel was 5 under after round 1. He shot an 85 in round 2 in 2016. Which is just insane to think about. And that's what happens sometimes when you get stuck into the bad part of the draw, that you go from great to very poor just overnight. And he ended up missing the cut, which you had mentioned was at +4. So again, it's going to be all condition-based things. And I would think of Billy Horschel, especially at that time. I mean, that's when I don't know if, was that the year that he ended up winning the FedEx Cup 2014? It may have been before that, but like he was a very highly skilled player at that time. And you can just see how it can absolutely beat you up. And like, when you've played highly competitive rounds and in terrible weather, like how much of that becomes a mental factor?
Oh, it's so mental. It's so mental. And in Billy's case, not only was he a highly skilled player, but like his skill set's accurate off the tee, good with his irons, good distance control, solid short game, excellent putter. And yet, even for him, it just gets that little bit difficult. His game is just a little bit off. And it's like, it's similar to compounding interest. It's just, it hits you and hits you and hits you. And the next thing you know, you're struggling, making bogey after bogey, and it feels like there's no way back.
Number 9, the Monk, 387 yards as a par 4. Again, is this one where if you have the distance, you can just kind of fire and see what you got left?
Kind of. This one turns a lot, so I'll blow this up again. You can see very narrow, turning left to right, straight left to right wind too. So the fact that it's turning makes it a little bit tougher. So for example, let's say I was on this line, 297 to get to the fairway, and then about 340 through it. So I'd have to make sure that not only do I carry the fescue on this line, but I also have enough room to stop it before the fescue. This left to right wind will absolutely help with that. But it's another one. I want to hit this ball low to keep it out of the wind a little bit. And then I also want to turn it a little left to right so that it's then chasing out on the angle of this fairway, effectively widening it. But it's a tough win. And actually, cool thing too. Let me blow this back up. On this line, notice this wind. The direction of the wind really changes based on the line that I'm taking, just because the further left I go, the more into the wind it becomes. So you really have to be aware of all those things. But this is going to be my line right here. Just another low cut, trying to cut it right through this wind.
Let's see it.
Maybe too far left.
I got to avoid those bunkers.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And it does seem now, like after you've played the ball up to that left side of the fairway, that the slope of the fairway is a little bit, against where the fescue is. So you could play it up there and get the roll back into the fairway.
Yeah, definitely. You see that a decent amount on this course where it definitely favors playing the ball on the ground almost as soon as possible in certain spots, like that one. Not just because that keeps it out of the wind, but then also because the actual terrain will help you instead of working against you that way.
All right, so you're left with about 115 in. Honest guy, I mean, I say this about a ton of courses anyway, but this really seems like as long as the wind doesn't absolutely crush him, that Colin Morikawa should be pretty good here.
Yeah, he should. The only thing that could possibly keep him from being one of the favorites, I think, is if distance has just a huge impact in the week, particularly carry distance, because I remember you made the point at Pinehurst that Keimer, when he won there, he was near the top in distance in large part just because he was hitting a lot of fairways. So Morikawa could do the same type of thing with his overall distance here. If he's hitting a lot of fairways, the ball's really chasing out. But if carry distance really matters, where you can take bunkers out of play, obviously that's where Colin is, a step or two behind Rory, Bryson, those guys.
All right, so just another wedge into these greens. So yeah, if you're locked, so this is how all the big hitters end up at the top of the leaderboard. What we've seen the past few times is just you're gonna get to a day where your driver's working, and then can you hit your gap wedge to 10 feet and make those putts?
Yeah, and the other thing is, when we started this round, we were playing with light wind. This is a full green light situation. I'm trying to hit this ball close.
I'm probably making, at least a fractional birdie here on the simulator. I was under par going into the conditions change. Now I'm 1.4 over. This wind just makes an enormous difference. It even takes this little wedge shot and turns it into something difficult because now I've got a 15-mile-per-hour crosswind. Again, that's probably playing more like 20 to 25, but that 20 to 25 is what you can often see here on the coast in Scotland. So even these short ones, these scoring shots can be difficult. You're still going to see guys hit it close and make birdies, but it brings into that play of like, you'll see almost more birdies and bogeys than we're sometimes accustomed to seeing.
Well, that actually makes a lot of sense because, I mean, if you fuck up this shot, who knows where the ball is going to roll? You get one bad lie in the fescue, and all of a sudden you can make an 8 if you ping-pong it across the green.
Yeah, and not only that, but the wind doesn't just make it harder to hit it where I want, but it also makes it a lot harder to control where I miss. If there's no wind here, I can almost guarantee you I will miss this ball left of the flag. If I get even just a little bit more cut spin than I want to on this ball, the wind can throw it way, way right. I'm short-sided in the high rough. And the flip side of that is I could be scared of that miss, turn one over, and now I'm in deep rough left of this green. It's like, man, I was 115 yards out. How did I possibly miss it that bad? But that's what wind does.
All right. Let's see how you do with this wind.
Right, yeah, right after I talked myself into all the really bad misses, right? Sure enough, there we go. A little bit right, and it just throws it.
And now you're short-sighted, and, I mean, your lie is going to be fine on the simulator. In real life, who knows?
Yeah, and to give some context, so you can even see it at the bottom of the screen, side spin, only 500 RPM right. I can see it here, the spin axis, only 2.8 degrees of cut spin. That's like a 1-2 yard cut, something like that without that wind, and you saw how much it just threw that thing to the right. So it really is, the wind is just this like huge variable that makes everything infinitely tougher.
Would you rely on Texas guys here? Brits and Texas guys?
Well, so I think there's definitely something to that. I'll go back to what I said earlier about like being able to shape it into the wind. If I was a better iron player, I wouldn't have been hitting the shot that I just tried to hit. I'd be hitting a draw into that. I really am not comfortable drawing the ball, so I was just trying to give myself enough room left of it. Hit a little bit of a block, had a little bit too much cut spin, and so instead of being just a couple feet right of that pin, I was 12 yards right of it.
All right, let's get this up and down.
Oh, a little too deep. I don't know if you've ever played on a simulator. Chipping is one of the hardest things to do when you first start because you're always used to like gauging the distance of the shot by what you see. I don't stand up to a 40-foot chip shot and say, all right, I'm going to carry this 32 feet. I say, I'm going to hit it to the pin that's right in front of me that I'm staring at. And you get on a simulator and you got to actually calculate, oh, I have to carry this 32 feet. And it's a really, really weird adjustment to make.
Well, let's call that a round. We'll play 9 holes with Alex Blickle of FTNFantasy.com to walk us through. So in your mind, if you do, I mean, again, the conditions could be benign and someone wins at 25 under par. That's on the table. We've seen Open Championships go that way. Hopefully that's not the case because that's not what we as viewers want to see, but that also increases the variance a lot. So when you think of guys, besides Scotty Scheffler, who can shape the ball both ways, hit high shots, hit low shots, whatever, who are some of the other players that come to mind for you that can actually do that?
I think Russell Henley is a guy that stands out to me. And it's interesting because we talked about how distance could end up being super predictive. I can't tell you how many times this year, last year, over the last 3 years, really, we've gotten to a course where distance is super important. And there's Russell Henley at the top. I don't think there's anyone in golf right now that does a better job of tailoring their game plan to their own skill sets, regardless of what the course is asking for, than Henley. He's so solid all around. We know he's accurate enough off the tee to avoid these bunkers. If there's someone who can be precise enough from 170 over and over and over again, Henley's up there. And then also great putter, great short game. And in terms of managing misses, like he's at the top. And I don't totally know if he can shape it both directions, but he does have a lower ball flight that is going to be less affected by wind on average.
I would think someone like Shane Lowry won at Portrush, and which also turned into kind of a bomber's track by the time that we got to the end of it. They had bad weather. It was wet that week. And he just, when you see his win, same as Tommy in a weird way, like when you see how they play in Europe and especially in Britain or in Scotland or wherever the hell they're going to be at, that they can manage their putting a lot better. Lowry especially, who legitimately cannot putt in America, but kind of can overseas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think the speed of the greens has a lot to do with that. There are a lot of guys, their putting stroke really fits super fast greens. It's all body rotations. Like personally, my putting stroke looks a lot like this. I have very little hand movement. That's going to play a lot better on fast greens than slow greens. Then there are guys who they get a little bit of this like wrist action in their putting stroke. That's going to play a lot better on slow greens. So there are definitely guys who are better suited for the greens overseas where the wind keeps you from having, 13, 14 on the stem type speeds.
All right. Alex Blickle, thanks for doing this. It was a fun experiment.
It was. Hopefully we can dial it in even more and maybe do this again next year for a major of some kind.
Yeah, we'll get you some hardwired internet for the simulator and we'll be off to the races.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Where can everyone follow you and what should they expect throughout the course of Open Championship Week content-wise from you?
We'll do an episode of Pro v Pro over on the FTN YouTube channel. It's with myself and my buddy Justin Bates. We met at PGA Tour Canada's Q School about 8 years ago, and it's been a blast to do that show with him. So talk through course fit, all bet stuff, all DFS stuff, one and done. And I know you love Underdog. We've been doing an Underdog play of the day. I love this pick'em stuff, like Underdog, Prize Picks, all that good stuff. It's so much fun, and I think anybody who already plays DFS, they're already betting, you already have the skill sets to do well on Underdog and these pick'em sites, so you might as well give it a try.
All right. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me at the PME. Obviously, Mayo Media Network and the Pat Mayo Experience is where you need to be at for all different angles of Open Championship coverage. I hope you enjoyed a new experiment that we put into place for an extra show this week. We'll have the research show. We'll have the picks, the bets, DraftKings plays, the Underdog plays, everything you need for Open Championship Week. So use code Mayo at Underdog Fantasy right now to get a deposit bonus of up to $250 and put what you've learned here into play. Hopefully it was enough to point you in the right direction of the different skill sets that you can be looking at this week. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience.